Yeah, it's interesting. As a hockey fan, watching over the last couple of months, remember Florida went on a 5 game winning streak. A lot of Panthers fans then saying, "We got it back, we're in it, we're back." And it's a funny thing because I've watched the Panthers all year, and they've never seemed to get it together. Even during the winning streak, there's just something missing with this team. I don't think it helped that they fired Gerard Gallant. I go back to that moment and say, you know what? This didn't help. And it didn't. They didn't get better after Tom Rowe came in as coach. And, the rumor was at the time, Gerard Gallant was basically left standing at the side of the road on a snap decision by ownership. We're just getting rid of him. He doesn't know what he's doing. Well, with this loss to Toronto tonight, by my math, they have 1 point left before they're eliminated from the playoffs, and they have Philly, Carolina, the Islanders, Tampa, and Boston ahead of them. Good luck. And there's some sticky issues here. So I'm looking at the scoring stats for Florida and say, okay, so why did they miss the playoffs? Okay, well, having Huberdeau out for most of the year didn't help them. They were behind the 8 ball with that. Having Barkov out for a long time didn't help them. By the time they picked up Vanek, they were also basically almost out of the playoff race altogether. Trocheck is a good first liner. Marchessault has been a warrior, but there really isn't a lot of depth there. And I remember taking a lot of flack last summer. When I said Riley Smith got way too much money for Riley Smith, a lot of people said, you haven't looked at his advanced stats, and you haven't looked at this and that, and there were all these stats thrown at me. Well, what I'm looking at now is a Riley Smith who's got 13 goals, 33 points, in 73 games coming into tonight, not including tonight's game. He is not worth the amount of money they gave him. He's not worth the term they gave him. He had one really good year. I watched him in Dallas and I watched him in Boston when I said last year, when I said Florida's giving these guys too much money. These are not core guys on a contender. I got told I was crazy. I got told Florida was going to be fantastic. Florida was probably going to win the division. No. And really, to me, and I believe he just scored a goal. Yeah. Yager just scored a goal. And Yager's the feel-good story for everybody this year. And I really hate to be the guy raining on it. Oh, no, I don't think Yager actually touched that. Was it in the net before Yager touched it? Nope. Yager did get that. That's his goal. So that's 15 goals this year. And that's a decent total. Here's the problem. Jaromir Jagr, the one that I remember from the 90s and the early 2000s, was the #1 scorer in the league. He was head and shoulders above everybody else. This Jagr, the mid-40s Jagr, is a decent guy. He belongs in the third line. And again, I get, things thrown at me and get things said to me by Jagr fans who say that I'm crazy and he is a top 6 forward. And what am I talking about? He's not anymore. He should be on power plays. He should be, out in situations like this where he's the 6th attacker. That's fine. But he is no longer a top 6 threat. I remember in 2013 for the Bruins, what stood out to me with Jagr was the guy competes on every shift. He busts his ass every shift, and it's really hard not to cheer for him. His hands aren't what they were. And you're in your mid-40s, they're not going to be. I'm in my mid-40s, I know what I'm talking about. And he's just not the player he was. And the player that he is not a guy you can have in your top 6 and be a contender. And I don't say that as a person who hates Jagr. And it seems like if you say anything bad about Jagr, or even just anything like, it's probably time he retires. People get all angry, like, what are you talking about? There are plenty of players who've retired when they could have stuck around. Marty Brodeur, when he came out and played with St. Louis there, showed he could still play hockey. Retired. When Joe Sakic retired, he probably could have rehabbed whatever injuries he had and played a little bit more, but he thought, you know what? Now I'm done. Gretzky could have gone on for another year or two. There's no way that the NHL would have just left him sitting there. He's still Wayne Gretzky. He'll still get butts and seats. He retired. At some point in time, in every player's life, it's time. And what I'm saying for Yager is, and I know he's talking about, I'm going to play into my 50s. I honestly think the best time for him to retire is right now. I think there's nothing anyone can take from him. He's one of the all-time greats. He's got I would think he's in the top 10 all-time greats, and I know people are going to say, well, he's number 2 in scoring. Yeah, but the other odd part is the same people who say that all those points in the early 90s shouldn't really count are the same people arguing that Yager is one of the all-time greats. Now, if Yager hadn't gone to the KHL, Yager's already knocking on the door of Gretzky's record, and then I can understand him sticking around, because he probably would have passed the goal-scoring record of Wayne Gretzky. But he went to the KHL. And he was considered done in the NHL at that point. There's nothing more for Yager to do. And for Florida, they need to build around the young guys. So what they got to do is they got to have Trocheck. They got to have Barkov. Marchessault's definitely coming back. Yandel, they put too much money into him. They'll have to bring him back. And, Huberdeau obviously is still there. Demers, Riley Smith. I think UC Jokinen's going to end up somewhere else next year. I don't think Vanek comes back. Colton Sevier, who knows? Eric Ekblad's obviously a cornerstone for that franchise. Matheson's played well. There's no reason to get rid of him. Pysyk, well, they just picked up Pysyk last summer, so I can't see them ditching him now. Jared McCann's been a waste. I was wrong about that trade on both sides. I didn't expect Goodbranson to be hurt most of the year, and I just didn't expect McCann to not even play this year. He's 29 games, he's been invisible. But while there are parts in Florida that you can be happy with, there are certain things you can look at in Florida and say, there's hope. They also have an aging Luongo, rapidly aging Luongo, who's been hurt for about a month now, and Reimer's clearly their starter. They don't seem to have a backup plan right now, and I like Reimer a lot. I think that Reimer took a lot of flack in Toronto that he didn't deserve. And I always thought Reimer deserved a shot at actually being the starter. I honestly don't know that he's a starter, though. And if Florida goes with Reimer as the starter next year, I don't know. But I think the money that they would spend on Yager, I think they're better off spending it elsewhere. I think there's a lot of good pieces in Florida, but there isn't a good team in Florida. And I'm not even going to get into the whole analytics argument. I just don't think it's a good team. I think there's pieces. There's reasons to be happy. There's reasons to look and say next year they'll be back in the playoffs. But I could also point out plenty of reasons that they're going to struggle. The Leafs are on their way up. The Canadiens look solid. I don't see any reason the Senators fall off a cliff next year, and it looks like the Bruins are going to make the playoffs after my rant. I don't know what happened, but they've won 2 in a row. Yeah, I'm going to take credit for that bullshit. But Florida's mired near the bottom of the league, and they still have Tom Rowe as their coach. Tom Rowe's not a coach. Tom Rowe's been stuck in that position by ownership, an ownership team that really should treat him better, because they've left him as their scapegoat. He is clearly out there as the scapegoat. He is clearly their scapegoat. Tom Rowe is the next one to fall if this falls apart. And I don't agree with it. I really honestly don't agree with it. But at the same time, this was the job Rowe took. And I look at the Florida Panthers and I say, wow, this is a team that's got problems. Because I don't know how you build from here. And I don't know what pieces are going to come in next year that are going to turn this team around. They gave up some talent in the offseason, and I honestly think if they move on from Yager, and if Luongo retires, which would suck, because then his contract for the remainder of it gets charged to the Vancouver Canucks. Thank you very much, Mike Gillis. But if Luongo retires, Florida's got problems, but Florida's got lots of cap space to fix it. I don't know that they'll ever be a cap team, because when your attendance is down and you're not generating the revenue, it's hard to be a cap team because you're not generating those revenues to justify being a cap team. So, I don't know. It's kind of a mess. Marchessault's the feel-good story of the year if you're a Florida fan. You can look at Huberdeau and Barkov and say, man, if we had these guys all year, it'd be different. But over the last little while, they've had those guys, and it hasn't been very different. Huberdeau made a huge difference when he first came back, and then it just sort of stopped. And it's not Huberdeau's fault. I'm not blaming him. Don't anybody go, oh, he's talking about Huberdeau like he's the problem. No. But the problems in Florida cannot be fixed by one player. But it's funny how in Vancouver, there's a lot of complaints about how Vancouver has young players and old players. Florida kind of has the same thing right now. And it's a roster that's not really very well put together. And there's no depth. There's no depth. And I'm not sure what they're going to do to fix it. Because if the owners are convinced that there's a Moneyball way to build the team, you can Moneyball part of a team. You can't do the whole team that way. Look at Chris Russell in Edmonton. Look at him. Everybody talked smack about Chris Russell over the summer. Hell, even I did. I admit it. And yet adding him to the Oilers seems like a genius move right now. The Oilers are in the playoffs as we speak. They're sitting with 91 points. Florida has 77. Last year, Florida had 103. And the Oilers, they were nowhere near the playoffs last year. But the weird part is that nobody wants to give Chiarelli credit for them being up there, outside of Oilers fans and a few of us Bruins fans. And then the same crowd wants to make excuses for Florida being bad. They're not a good team. The one argument I've had about puck possession is you can have the puck as much as you want, but if you can't score, puck possession doesn't matter. You have the puck the whole game, minus 30 seconds. But in those 30 seconds, if the other team scores, and you haven't scored in the other 59 minutes because you don't have a finisher on your team, it really doesn't matter. And a lot of games I watched of Florida's, outside of Marchessault, who was a consistent threat, there didn't seem to be enough finishers. There didn't seem to be enough guys who were stepping up and scoring big goals. And that includes Jágr. And I understand he's kind of a treasure among NHL circles now, and he's kind of untouchable. But as I proved with Gretzky in the 80s and Lemieux in the 90s, I don't consider anybody untouchable in terms of being criticized. And to me, it's time for Jágr to retire. Florida needs to figure this out. And they probably would benefit from committing to Reimer and bringing in a young goalie to back things up. And I've been a big Luongo fan for a long time. But I don't know that Luongo's play is going to get any better. And his numbers this year weren't great. And now he started getting hurt again. They've already shown they're cutthroat. When they fired Gerard Gallant, they showed how cutthroat they are. So I don't have a whole lot of pity for Florida ownership. Right. I can talk if I want. I don't have a lot of pity for Florida ownership. Because when you're taking a coach as respected by his players as Gerard Gallant and firing him spur of the moment and leaving him at the side of the road to get a cab, which is what was apparent, which is what apparently happened, you are really running the risk of alienating your entire locker room, of alienating the very players that you need to win games in order to make your investment pay off. So, it's one of those things I look at and I say, well, the drop that Florida has suffered Right now, they're 26 points behind where they finished last year. And over the summer, I kept hearing, well, Florida's really fixed their lineup. And I'm thinking, they won the damn division. Now, they finished fourth. They finished fourth in the conference. Wherever they finished. I think it was fourth in the conference. Can I put you down for 2 seconds to check? No, I didn't think so. But either way, like Florida had a good team last year and then decided to tinker and bring guys in. My statement over the summer was, how do we know these new players are all going to gel with all the players who are already there? How do we know that Demers and Yandel and some of these new faces are going to merge and mesh with what's already there? To which people responded with, well, they're professionals. Of course they're going to. That's not how it works. It takes a while to get chemistry with your teammates, in most cases. For every player you see get traded who plays fantastic after they get traded, there are players who play terribly after they're traded. Look how long it took Vanek to score his first goal with Florida. Look at Martin Hansel in Minnesota. He started picking it up now, but it didn't look so good at the beginning there. Everybody was talking about how great Ryan White looked. And Hansel, kind of invisible offensively. So I don't know. I don't know how you fix it. Because it looks to me like the power in the East belongs in the Metro. So the odds of Florida catching up with Metro teams and getting a wildcard spot from one of them, pretty slim. They're 19 points behind the Rangers, and they're 5 points behind the Islanders. They're 5 points behind Carolina. So any of them that move up next year, odds are Florida's not competing with them. Florida's had a 26-point drop so far this year. It'll probably end up around 20. They'll probably come through and win some games at the end of the year when it doesn't matter to get up to 83 or 84 points. But for them to break through, it's going to be a really, really tall task. They've put themselves behind the 8 ball, and they did it at a time when they really needed to make a statement. They came out last year and they had a very good season, and they needed to show it wasn't just a one-time thing. And what they've kind of shown this year is it was a one-time thing. And it can be really hard for a team to recover from that. Ask Toronto fans about 2013. Made the playoffs. Oh, this is great. We're going somewhere. And then, nope. Once you fall out of the playoffs, it can be very difficult to climb back in. This year has been an exception where you've seen a lot of teams who were down and out last year climb their way into it. That's an exception. Thanks in part to an exceptional draft year. Thanks in part to some really smart general managers. Some really good coaching that has managed to get poor teams and turn them around relatively quickly. Now it's Florida's turn. Can they do it? Let me know in the comments below what you think Florida needs to do to fix it. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. I'm a little more tired this week than normal because first aid is first aid training, like level 2 first aid training is intense. It's a week-long course, and so I've got that going on in my brain, and then some stuff personally that hit today. That, anyways, if you're a patron, I'll be posting a Patreon video tonight, because yeah. But for now, we're talking about Florida. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and thanks for watching.